Shred, International Editor at the Cyber Express, and with me today is Naman Talwar, Senior Solutions Architect for Threat Intelligence Leader, Cyble. And we're going to talk about the rapidly changing threat landscape for executives. Welcome, Naman, and so great to have you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right. It seems that at least here in the U.S. that personal and professional online presence and physical threats have come together to create a dangerous new environment. What are you seeing here?
Yeah, so I think we all knew about just one of the incident that just happened. I'll not take the names, but where one of the executives were targeted. There was always threats. Threats were being made on the organizations, whether, earlier you had your usual suspects, right? So let's just say if you are a military organizations, people will target you. If you are a critical infrastructure, let's just say energy sector, oil sector, where it's a little more politicized, then people used to target you. Now what I've seen is the threats are now spreading to almost every organization in the world. What do I mean by that? It's if you're a law firm, people will, if you're an insurance firm, something that happened in the insurance firm, if you're a banking firm, it doesn't matter which basically industry you belong to. If people, and these people could be political actors, these people could be individual actors, it could be people who were just aggrieved by something that the company did, or they perceived that something that company did. Almost everybody and people, as you know, like to vent out on social media. A lot of times, if they are talking about you, they're discussing about you. Sometimes threats also become real. So in this case, what we saw was threats. It used to be just threats most of the times, and now suddenly is unfortunately somebody took it a little too far and actually did whatever they did. So what I've seen so far is because of what happened, organizations are always very focused on physical security. But now I suddenly saw a lot of requests coming for organizations so that, this, we thought it was not a problem for us, but suddenly has become a problem for us. So just that one example of where, something that was not normal for a lot of organizations, suddenly everybody's now looking into it. So it has become more real. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So it's become much more real in terms of the threats, and threat becomes perceivable. So it's not now the threat is just for one particular person. Threat has been released. If the threat has been released for your organizations, the executives become by default the people who are also under risk. So both are being interlinked. Organizations. So if somebody is agreed with the organizations, they are linking it back to executives, CEO, CFO, CTO, CIOs, whoever it is. So it's become a bit of a problem after that incident.
Wow. So it's not just sensitive sectors like finance or government or something like that. It's everyone.
It's everywhere. Think of this: finance, government, energy, oil. These used to be the usual suspects, but now it's coming down to law firms. It's coming down to banking sector. It's coming down to basically if you have done something which people perceive that it's not good for them, and I don't know, maybe social media on just the presence of firearms, whether in US or across the globe, it has actually become a real threat. And even if let's just say you own a chain of cafes or even McDonald's, right? For specific organizations which are just completely harmless, threats are being levied. Either they make it a political reason, let's just say in case of Israel, Hamas and all of that, some people brought organizations into that discussion also. So this organization supports this, therefore I will target them, right? Or whether that's Russia, Ukraine. So those entities which any particular threat perceive that, threat actor perceive that this organization is politically tied to a particular country, a particular ideology, those organizations, even just cafes, chains of cafes, burgers and things like that. So almost everybody has come under this umbrella of threat being levied against them. And it's become actually much more visible to us across all the industries.
Yeah, that is true. So almost any point of view that a company takes, any position on a hot button issue could actually turn into a problem.
Yeah.
Interesting. So with all those possible ways threats could happen, what should What should organizations do to prioritize their defenses? What would you recommend that they focus on first?
So, whether it's physical threats, whether it's somebody is talking about you, I think the first and the simplest and the easiest and probably the cheapest way to look at this problem is identify online problems, online threats that are coming to you. So, I'll give an example. Almost everybody, either somebody who's listening to the podcast or it's in the call or just, anybody in this world, if you have a digital presence, let's just say you have an email ID for more than 6 months, you have a phone number that you've been holding for some time, there is a very good chance, and this is not an exaggeration, there is a very good chance that their personal information is already out there. Either it's coming up on dark web or it's coming up on social media. So almost it depends on countries, it depends on geographies, it depends on organizations. But anywhere from 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of the total people who have a digital presence, always we always work under the assumption that your phone numbers, your addresses, if somebody is very motivated to hurt you or motivated to target you, they probably know where your daughter or son goes to college, they will know where you work, where you live, all of your past history. So all of these things, the information is already available. Either it's coming up in illegal or cybercrime forums like dark web, or it's just coming out through normal organizations like lead agencies, right? Which contains a lot of your information, your phone numbers, your emails. So first thing is identify. There are organizations like Cyble who does that. Identify on your professional emails, on your phone number, on your personal number, is there any data that is already gone out or not on the dark web? Do people know where you live? Do people know where your children study? Do people know where your wife goes to work? Do people know where you go to and fro? And a lot of these executives, as well as their kids, they also tend to share a lot of information, right? My daughter got accepted into Stanford or London Business School. So a lot of information, if somebody is really motivated, is already public. So first thing is, on the dark web, on the surface web, you need to get a visibility of what your data is already there. That is number one. Second thing, what you do is when you go either on the dark web, for the people who don't know, dark web is basically a place on the internet where anybody can pretend to be anybody. Nobody knows who you really are. So people can hide behind a fake identity. So if somebody is talking about you, you won't really know who that is. So on the dark web and on social media, second thing that you can start monitoring is the chatters, the discussions, the mentions. So irrespective of the language, if somebody is talking about you directly, the executives directly, or if they're talking about the company, at least those chatters, those discussions, those mentions need to be tracked. Right? And there are certain keywords that you can make. So let's just say maybe somebody will not directly say that I will kill Naman Talwar. They will not use the word. But maybe they use, when they are saying I will take care of him or I will burn. So there are some specific sets of keywords that you need to monitor along with the name of your organizations or name of yours. All of those things you need to monitor so that in the so let's just say large organization, right? There are a lot of chatters about that organization. How do you filter out the specific physical threats that are coming out to you? So you build a set of keywords and queries. The intention is if 1,000 people are talking about you, these are the 5 people or accounts or somebody is pretending to be somebody who actually said something which could be constituted as a physical threat. So the first element is identify the information that is already there. Second information is to monitor the charters and discussions, and then there are other levels. You can hire a private security firm. We'll talk about physical threats also. Physical threats where, for example, if somebody is traveling or something, we'll discuss that. But the bare minimum an organization or an employee or an executive can do, even if you don't want to hire very expensive security firms, just know at any point of time that people know your address, where you live, where your daughter goes to school. And the second element is if there are some real threats that have been made against your organization and you, just take some precautionary measures. We'll talk about those precautionary measures later on also. But the bare minimum they can do is start monitoring the social media and dark web for that organization.
Yeah, you actually made me think that you need to watch your family members also, because if your kids are posting, hey, we're going on this great trip, then all of a sudden everyone knows where you are too. So
yeah. A lot of time, let's just say an executive goes and gives a talk in a college, right? I'm going to Stanford to give a lecture. So every single person knows that you are there in that particular organization, probably in that hall from this time to this time.
Right? Yes.
So a lot of time we tend to sometimes our kids or a lot of time themselves, although they have a tendency to, take photos of their boarding passes and they post it. I'm traveling somewhere on thing. So as private as you can, especially if your organization in sensitive sector, this used to be 6 months ago, even if your organization is not a sensitive sector right now, just if you're traveling somewhere, if you're going somewhere which is outside your office, the moment you're outside your office, you become a little more vulnerable or your house. Try to contain the information, try to contain the chat, and the same can be done for your family members. Don't provide unnecessary information of your travel history, especially if you're under any sort of threat.
Wow. That's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So you touched on travel. What should organizations do as far as physical security is concerned, both in offices and while traveling? Are there like minimum things people should be doing, or things everyone should be doing?
So in office, more or less, you're still safe because it's a controlled access environment. There's a security. If somebody actually gets in, you have enough time to respond to it, move out of it. But if you're traveling, let's just say whether you're traveling to another city or you're traveling to a designated place, right? There are, so basically there is an element of physical threat assessment. What you can do is, let's just say you're traveling to a particular place, which is a sensitive area, right? We need to also take into account it's not always agreed individual who's going to target you. It could be people, let's just say you're traveling, I don't want to take the name of any location, you're traveling to a specific location and everybody knows you're a high net worth individual, right? Because you're the CEO of the company. People in some parts of the world, people can do kidnapping. There is a ransom element that also comes in. So if you're traveling to somewhere, if you're, let's just say, traveling to a remote office, if you're traveling to an office, or you're just meeting somewhere, at any point of time, you can at least figure out what were the threats that were there in the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 days. So Cyble also has that capability, is where you can actually associate any place on the world and in that 5 kilometer radius across that, or 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers, whatever that makes sense for you, you can figure out what was the physical threat. Physical threat could not be just, it could not be just individual or organization. It could be just as simple as, let's just say, there's an earthquake. There's a possibility of tornado. There is just waterlogging, so that, your travel and other things. So any sort of physical threat across the globe can also be monitored. So that too, if you have actually physical threats being made on you, if you're traveling just from office to home, just take simple precautionary methods, like if threat has been made, hire a private security firm. If that is not there, just take different routes to your home, right? You don't need to be very predictable in your travel. But apart from that, I think if you're traveling somewhere or you're just going to your offices, as well, I would recommend for all the offices that you have, including data centers, whatever you have at any point of time, just monitor the physical threats in 5, 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers in that area. That, I think, more or less, even hiring extra private security firm, you can at least reduce 60, 70, 80% of the threats, any possible threat that could come for you. And if you're traveling in a sensitive zone, let's just say there's a lot of kidnapping, sometimes that happens, or maybe gun shooting could be a place, or it could be just, there is unrest, whatever it is, those things you get to know about it. So you know exactly where you're going, where you're traveling, and how you're going to come out of it. These are some of those basic measures anybody can take to prevent while traveling or while just, going to office and home.
Thank you. You had touched on this, but I wanted to focus on it just a little bit more. I had actually read that about half of all CEOs have faced threats at one point or another, which seems really high to me. But I guess, given the internet, it's certainly possible. So how do organizations tell real threats from people who are just venting?
Yeah. So you're talking about just the CEOs. I'm talking about now, after what just happened, any threat on company can also be considered a threat on CEO. So it could be that, somebody was not just angry at the CEO, it could be just angry at the company. So let's just say it's a CEO, there are 50 locations across the globe. He doesn't probably even know what happened in a particular claim, insurance claim or something or whatever, right? In a particular case, if you're a law firm. But if there is a threat on your organization, and I think the number sounds about right, because threat is also on the people, but it's also on the organization. The simplest way is there are certain ways to differentiate real threats from just venting out. But I would start by saying you should not be complacent on any sort of threat that is being made towards you or your organization. The moment there is a threat being made, you can bring in this standard security tools, right? I will be a little more, will do the travel assessments, will do the physical assessments, will monitor chatters on social media and dark web. That anyway standardly should happen. But yes, if the threat is being made by, let's just say, a known organization, right? Let's just say a lot of time, if let's just say it's a terrorism outfit, right? A lot of time they tend to issue warnings, right? So if it's known organization who has a history of doing something like that, you should take it seriously. But I would not also say that any physical threat that is coming to you, even if it's coming out from an anonymous account which has 2 followers, doesn't have an image on it, whatever, every single threat should be taken into seriously. How do you filter the threats from thousands and thousands of noise that comes for your organization? You can filter that using specific keywords like, kill, assassin, take care of it, whatever the keywords that are being used. So those can be filtered. But if it's coming out from organized groups, organized people, serious people in terms of they have history of doing certain something like that, then you should bring all of your security measures in place. But the main problem is not getting to threats. The main problem is out of thousands of things that are being talked about my company. Let's just say you're a bank, people complaining, I don't get access to my account, somebody committed a fraud on my account, whatever. It goes on, right? So if your brand name, out of thousands of chatters that are being discussed about you, how do you come down to actual threats that are being made about you? That is the main element. So if there are 1,000 people talking about you, these are the 5 people which said something which crossed that threshold of now it's not just anger. It seems like a threat. Then obviously there are other measures that you can take place, but at least monitoring those specific keywords is very important for the organization as well as for the individual.
Yeah, sorry, great points. You actually made me think. I've seen some dark web conversations where people talk about the potential for violence, and if you're not careful, you might take that as a non-threatening message. But when you read the whole thing and see the context there, you're not so sure that they wouldn't take part in the violence if they had a chance. So yeah, definitely.
And it's not like I'm not being alarmist in nature. This happens. Sometimes there are people who just want to make noise. Like there are some hacktivists. All they will talk about is threatening, killing, hurting somebody, targeting somebody. All they will talk about. Most of it would not happen. What I'm still trying to say is, in terms of physical security or even reputational damage, we cannot be complacent. So the alert should be triggered, whatever alerting system that you have, whatever alerting system that you're monitoring using social media, dark web, whatever that is, it should always be in a critical, at least on a critical or high severity. The threat should be considered. No threat should be taken lightly, is what I would suggest.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great points. You've kind of touched on this, but are there any tools that can make keeping executives safe easier?
Yeah, so in Cyble vision platform that we have a specific executive module. Whatever I have talked about, right? And this is without using very expensive physical security firms, right? You have your ex-commandos who are protecting you at all point of time. These are just a simple for large organization, medium, small size organization. The bare minimum what we can do is we can monitor their emails, we can monitor their chatters, we can monitor the phone numbers for any sort of leak of personal information, right? Their addresses, their details, any sort of leak of passwords also. A lot of time what happens is your passwords have come out, you don't know about it. What people do is, I'll give an example in one of the cases. So password leaked out for a particular executive through their personal email. Okay. So he was using similar passwords everywhere, but that personal password, whatever the threat actor then, they use that to log into the airline miles. We have specific miles account, right, for the airlines, where you have your entire travel history, all the travel points, air points, airline flight points, whatever you have. So they logged in and they got the entire travel history. This person travels through this particular place every 15 days, every 10 days, every 12 days, right? So first element is personal information. Second element is your credentials, because your credentials can be used. Let's just say your Twitter password can be used, or whatever credentials can be used, where there is no two-factor authentication in place to find more information about you, more information about your family, more information about your warehouse. Right? A lot of time people will try to implant malwares. This is another discussion. So their emails, phone numbers, professional emails should be monitored. Then Vision, what it does, it also monitors specific chatters, discussions, mentions. There will also be a big category, which is impersonation, where people pretend to be them. They'll use the LinkedIn image, they pretend to be them, they'll create a specific video, they'll create a fake account, and then try to get more information. We'll talk about that also later on. So impersonations, deepfakes, all of those elements that also come in. And finally, correlating all of that information to physical threat or wherever that person is traveling. So let's just say a person is traveling in an isolated part in Colombia, right? Maybe there is a factory there, right? Or they're traveling to a specific place in US, a specific place in Middle East, wherever it is, right? During the way, throughout the way, or in that particular location, were there any physical threats? Were there any shootings that happened? Or it could be, was there any a lot of waterlogging that which could risk somebody's life? Whatever it is, you monitor discussions, chatters, information, credentials. You monitor chatters on social media as well as on dark web. Then you correlate all of that information to where that person is traveling and if there are any physical threats. All of this thing can be combined in one place. And obviously impersonations and deepfakes, will talk about that. But all of this can be combined in one module. So you don't need to touch 10 different things to get this. All of this is gets everything, the executive suite, as well as some more important people within the organization. It doesn't have to be CEO, CFO, CTO, CIO. People can target IT admins, right? Because if you get access to some, then you can access a lot of information in Cyble Vision.
Oh. Well, you touched on a lot there. Let's start with the whole concept of privileged accounts. What can companies do to monitor those accounts, to make sure they're locked down, to detect leaks, all that sort of stuff? There's a lot that goes into keeping those safe. There's, obviously really valued data, money, all that sort of stuff can be found there. So it's a big target too.
So if you're an executive, you're automatically maybe close to IT admins, but you're automatically, at least for threat actors, whether those are cyber threat actors or physical threat actors, whoever it is, for those people, you are by default the most important people to target in the organization, right? Because an executive on their emails, on their laptop will have a lot of visibility of the organization. They will have a lot of sensitive information, sensitive documents, sensitive a lot of that. So if somebody wants to target you, you can always assume they will spend much more extra time in just targeting the executives. So what you do is their professional emails, you monitor for any sort of leaks, and these leaks sometimes happens without the knowledge of the executive. So what a lot of people tend to do, and if somebody is listening, they might also relate to it. If somebody is listening in IT security, people use their official email IDs on third parties. Okay. And then those third parties get leaked. So let's just say they use it to maybe book a travel something. But the travel vendor itself got breached, got hacked. And through that, their information, password, details, whatever they shared, that got out. Wherever that number. Or let's just say they logged on to a government for a government service. The government server itself got breached. And through that, whatever their social security number, their passport, where they live, what their details are. And this is not an exaggeration, almost, I would not, again, I don't want to be alarmist in it, but almost every second, third person who has a digital history, they will have some and other sort of information already available on the dark web. Right, from credentials in very clear form, credentials in an encrypted form, or just every single thing about you. So their accounts, professional accounts, need to be monitored with their permission. Their phone numbers and personal accounts can also be monitored. The intention is, if the information is being leaked out even through their personal email that they may have used in some place, all of those elements need to be done. But I'm not being alarmist in the way I'm saying. Executives are always, and will always be the primary targets for any organization, whether that's a physical actor or if it's a cyber criminal. the first people to target are executives.
Yeah. Wow. You mentioned deepfakes, which is another really big and growing area. With all the video fakes, voice fakes, online impersonations, all that sort of stuff. What can companies do to keep their executives' online presence and reputation safe? Not to mention the people who could be scammed by that. It seems like more and more employees are getting scammed by these very good deepfakes claiming to be their CEO or someone like that. What can companies do here?
So deepfakes are a larger part of a larger umbrella called impersonation, right? So what people do is they do one of the two things, and I'm sure everybody who's listening to the postcard will relate to it. What people do is they use, let's just say, a LinkedIn image of Paul. They'll go to Paul's account on LinkedIn. Everybody has their images. They'll copy paste the images, or maybe it's on a public website, or maybe you went to go to a lecture or something, wherever it is. For executives, they're usually public figures. But if even if they are not so public figures, at least they will have a LinkedIn which will be very prominent for everybody to see, because they have to generate a lot of business. So what people will do, they will use the LinkedIn image that they have, or whatever social image that they have. They'll create a fake WhatsApp account, or fake Telegram account, or fake YouTube account, whatever it is, right? Telegram account, they will reach out to, one of the common scenarios that I see is they will reach out to your CFO. They'll start asking, can you transfer money into this account? Or maybe reach out to somebody else. Can you send me this report on very urgently if they want to see some private information? So people, first usage is image usage. They'll create fake account impersonations, trying to be somebody, trying to trick internal people. Second element is trying to trick customers and clients. When these things happen to your clients, let's just say CEO is asking for money, or CEO is asking for a specific help. Somebody is pretending to be CEO, is asking for somebody help. So clients also start distrusting you as well as your brand. The second element is, and the third element is using deepfakes. Deepfakes are, for the people who don't know, these are just using your images. They are trying to create a realistic videos, and they can put anything in those videos, right? Some of the examples is, if your executive, let's just say, is in political stream, right? You are in intelligence organization, you're a military organization. People can create that, we will target this particular country, just create a problem. Or they will pretend to be, this happens a lot with political people, specifically political executives, is people will create a video which basically completely says different to what their actual policies are, and they start doing disinformation. So this is done by, not only by average people, this is also done by other foreign actors also. So one of the things that I see with the deepfakes is creating misinformation, hurting your brand. The second element is, let's just say somebody creates a using LinkedIn image of Paul, and they say, hi, I look after this company, and we are incurring a loss, very heavy loss, 3 days before IPO. Or let's just say you are in the market and suddenly somebody makes a video viral that company had 30% loss year on year, and suddenly your stocks goes down very heavily. So there are different types of impersonations that happen. The context is always around your organization. What you can do is, with people's permission, we can actually monitor and track where the fake accounts are being created at any point of time, where deepfakes are being created using image. Is, if there are videos, thousands of videos about a particular person, how many of them are artificially generated? You can do that using studying natural movements of face or not, right? And once you have that, you get all of those things removed. So it's not like you get them removed once and it's going to stop. There's going to be another problem after 5 days. It's a continuous thing. People will create fake accounts. If you are, the more public you are, the more fake accounts will be created for you. The more people dislike you, the more fake accounts will be created to you. So as and when they come, they need to be picked up immediately. High sensitive alerts need to be generated on them, and then you have to do a process called takedown. Basically, you take them down from the internet, which we also facilitate. So all of those things, it's deepfakes is big problem because AI just suddenly, but this your normal problem of people creating fake accounts and reaching out to you, and I'm sure the audience, the people listeners of the podcast will relate to it, that every single organization has happened where their CEO, CFO, CTO's fake accounts of those have been created to target employees or customers. It's very common.
Wow. There's a lot to watch for, isn't there? From the physical to the online to the deep fakes. Yeah, so many things to worry about these days, and it just seems to get worse too. They just keep getting better. So, yeah, it's funny. Actually, I was thinking that at some point, we are going to need way more than just your basic antivirus on our phones. We're going to need some sort of a deep fake detection on our phones. I mean, even our personal devices will need more to keep us safe. So crazy world.
You never know which laptop is compromised. So one of the things also we see is their laptops are specifically targeted, where people actually install, either they trick into it, maybe a family member they will do, or the one, and this is very common also. This is not hypothetical scenario, where they will actually install a malware, a spyware, to see exactly what is happening on the laptop. It doesn't have to be their official laptop, it could be their personal laptop. So that's why every single thing that is happening on dark web and social media needs to be monitored. Because you never know at present as we speak that your CEO, CFO, CTO have an actually malware or spyware in the system where somebody is actually spying on you. And this is not a hypothetical scenario, it's extremely common. So all of these things need to be brought into one place.
Well, thank you so much. My guest has been Naman Tawar of Threat Intelligence Leader Cyble, and thank you so much for being with us to talk about all the changes going on in the threat landscape for executives. And thank you also to our audience for listening in.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time.